From secret rehearsals to midnight dates, Hyeri and Wu-tae's hidden love story exposed. What really happened behind the closed doors of the studio? Were those lingering glances and quiet whispers just part of the act, or something much more intimate? Tonight, Red Carpet Revealed takes you inside the mystery. Let's uncover the truth together, right now. What really happens when the cameras stop rolling? The world has seen them smile on stage, perfect in every frame, but what about the moments when the lights dim, and they believe no one is watching? Tonight, Red Carpet Revealed takes you deep into the shadows of the studio where it all began, a story of secret rehearsals, whispered conversations, and midnight rendezvous that no one was supposed to know. What lies beneath the surface of Hyeri and Wu-tae's polished public image may surprise you. It began innocuously enough on a crisp autumn afternoon. The rehearsal studio hummed with energy as dancers stretched, producers barked orders, and assistants scurried about with clipboards. In the corner of the room, a piano played softly as the leads arrived. Hyeri entered first. Long coat draped over one arm, her hair pulled back into a simple bun. She nodded to the crew, smiling faintly before stepping onto the polished floor. Moments later, Wu-tae appeared, tall and composed. Expression unreadable yet somehow magnetic. For a moment, just a moment, their eyes met across the room. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but there was a flicker of recognition there, as though they already shared an unspoken understanding. Those present that day recall how their energy changed the room. When Hyeri and Wu-tae stood together, it was as if everything else faded. They moved through the choreography in perfect sync, adjusting instinctively to each other's rhythm, their movements effortless, their expressions natural. Even the choreographer seemed taken aback at how quickly they found their footing together. It was like watching a story unfold without words. One crew member later whispered. They didn't need direction. They just fit. Between takes, the rest of the cast would break off into their own conversations, but Hyeri and Wu-tae often lingered near each other, reviewing notes, sharing quiet laughter, or occasionally falling into comfortable silence. More than once, someone noticed Wu-tae adjusting her microphone cord, tucking stray strands of hair behind her ear, or offering her his water bottle. Hyeri, in turn, would tease him about his concentration, lightly nudging him with her shoulder or mimicking his more serious expressions. As the days passed, their interactions began to attract attention. In one rehearsal video that later leaked online, the pair could be seen practicing alone after everyone else had left, illuminated by a single spotlight. Their movements were slower now, more deliberate, almost tender. When the music stopped, they didn't immediately pull apart. Instead, they stood there, close enough that the air between them seemed charged, and then Hyeri smiled, a small, knowing smile, before finally stepping back. That moment alone sent fans into a frenzy once the clip surfaced. It wasn't just their onstage chemistry that fueled speculation. In candid shots posted to social media by other cast members, Hyeri and Wu-tae were always near each other, sometimes sitting shoulder to shoulder on the studio floor, sometimes sharing a quiet meal in the corner of the cafeteria. Observers began noting the way his gaze would follow her when she left the room, or how her expression softened whenever he spoke. A stylist confessed privately, they thought they were being subtle, but everyone could feel it. When the production moved into its final weeks, the tension between them became even more apparent. In one particularly memorable incident, Hyeri arrived at rehearsal visibly upset, her shoulders tense, her eyes downcast. Wu-tae was across the room at the time, engaged in conversation with the director. But the moment he noticed her demeanor, he excused himself and crossed to her side. Didn't say much, just placed a hand lightly on her back, leaning in to murmur something only she could hear. Whatever he said worked, because soon after, she was smiling again. By the time opening night arrived, the pair had become the unofficial focal point of the entire production. Fans who attended the performance remarked on the palpable electricity between them, describing their interactions as too real to be simply professional. On stage, they delivered every scene flawlessly, but it was the subtle glances, the way his hand lingered on hers a beat too long, gentle way she looked at him when he wasn't looking, those were the moments that truly captivated the audience. After the show, at the official after party, Hyeri and Wu-tae maintained their professional facades, greeting guests, posing for photographs, and making polite conversation. But those watching closely couldn't help but notice the way he subtly guided her through the crowd, keeping a protective hand at her elbow, or how she would glance at him whenever she laughed, as if to make sure he was watching. As the night wore on and guests began to trickle out, one photographer happened to catch a fleeting exchange between them outside the venue. Hyeri stood just beneath the awning, her coat draped over her shoulders. While Wu-tae stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets. He said something that made her laugh, and then, in a gesture so swift it might have been missed, he reached out and brushed his fingers along her cheek before quickly lowering his hand as another guest approached. The photo, blurry and grainy, was never officially released, but it made its way through private channels, fueling even more speculation. Over the next few weeks, rumors began to swirl more intensely. Tabloids ran stories with provocative headlines. Is something brewing behind the scenes? And Hyeri and Wu-tae, just friends or something more? Fans dissected every public appearance, analyzing body language, matching accessories, even comparing captions on their social media posts for hidden messages. In one post, Hyeri shared a photo of a cup of coffee with the words, "Late nights, warm company." Less than an hour later, Tae posted a photo of a street at night with the caption, "Some moments don't need words." The mounting speculation didn't go unnoticed. Press event promoting the show, a journalist boldly asked about their relationship. Hyeri laughed lightly, glancing at Wu-tae, who simply smiled and said, "We work well together." I think that shows on stage. But even then, the way they looked at each other seemed to say more than their carefully chosen words. Behind the scenes, those close to them began sharing stories anonymously. One crew member claimed to have seen them rehearsing late at night, long after everyone else had gone home. Their movements slow and intimate, the music barely audible. Another described a rainy evening when Wu-tae arrived at the studio with an extra umbrella, waiting by the door until Hyeri appeared so they could walk out together. It was around this time that the first real piece of evidence emerged. A series of photographs allegedly taken by a fan who happened to be walking home late one night. The picture showed Hyeri and Wu-tae outside a small, dimly lit cafe, seated at a table near the window. They weren't holding hands, but they leaned toward each other, heads close, smiles soft and unguarded. The fan who took the pictures claimed they stayed there for nearly 2 hours before leaving together, disappearing into the night. This was the confirmation they had been waiting for. The hashtag #HyeriWuTae trended globally, with fans divided between excitement and concern. Some argued that their private lives should remain private, while others eagerly speculated about the depth of their connection. Comment sections were flooded with theories, gifs, and even fanfiction inspired by their story. Despite the growing attention, neither Hyeri nor Wu-tae addressed the rumors directly. Instead, they carried on with their schedules, attending events and fulfilling obligations with the same quiet composure. But those who watched closely noticed subtle shifts: the way he instinctively reached for her hand when cameras weren't pointed at them, the way she lingered near him at the edges of crowded rooms, the way they seemed to retreat into their own little world whenever possible. In one particularly revealing moment, featured by a fan at a fansign event, Hyeri was asked what she valued most about her experience on the project. She paused, glanced sideways at Wu-tae, then answered softly, "Finding someone who makes everything feel lighter." A murmur rippled through the crowd as Wu-tae, standing beside her, ducked his head with a faint smile. It's these moments, the quiet, fleeting, almost imperceptible ones, that have captivated the public's imagination. They seem to exist in a delicate balance, walking the fine line between professionalism and intimacy, between what is seen and what is felt. Are Hyeri and Wu-tae simply kindred spirits caught up in the intensity of their craft? Or is there something more profound blossoming behind the curtain, away from prying eyes? In part 2, we will uncover the midnight dates, the whispered confessions, and the private moments that could reveal the truth behind their hidden love story. Stay tuned. The best is yet to come. The curtain may have fallen on their official production, but for Hyeri and Wu-tae, the story didn't end when the lights dimmed. If anything, What happened offstage was far more compelling than anything audiences could have imagined. As Red Carpet Reveal delved deeper into their world, what we found were not just scattered rumors or fleeting glances, but a pattern, a quiet rhythm of late-night rendezvous, hushed conversations, and moments so tender they could only belong to two people who had crossed a line they could never uncross. Not long after their show wrapped, whispers emerged from the tight-knit circle surrounding them. At first, it was just murmurs, a driver who claimed he picked them up from the same location late at night, a stylist who swore she saw them slipping out the back door of a wrap party together, a hotel staff member who noticed two familiar figures checking in under pseudonyms. The story seemed innocuous, almost ordinary, but when pieced together, they painted a picture far too deliberate to dismiss as coincidence. One night in particular stood out. A rainy, quiet evening in Seoul, when most of the city's nightlife had retreated indoors. According to a witness, a barista working the closing shift, Hyeri and Woo-tae arrived at a small, nondescript cafe tucked down an alley. Before midnight, they wore masks and baseball caps, blending into the shadows. The barista recalled how they chose a corner table far from the window and ordered only tea, as though the act of being there mattered more than what they drank. They didn't say much at first, she told us, but they kept leaning closer and closer, their hands resting on the table, their knees touching under it. At one point, Hyeri laughed at something Woo-tae whispered, and for a brief moment she took his hand in hers before quickly letting go when another customer entered. After that night, more accounts began to surface. An neighbor of Woo-tae's claimed to have seen Hyeri leaving his building early one morning, wearing a hoodie and sneakers, her hair pulled into a messy bun, carrying what looked like a script tucked under her arm. She looked happy, the neighbor noted, and he walked her to the end of the street before heading back inside. Then came the photographs, grainy but unmistakable, that set the internet ablaze. A series of 3 images showing the pair walking together along the Han River at nearly 2 a.m., their silhouettes outlined by the faint glow of street lamps. In the first, Woo-tae's hand hovers just at the small of her back as they stroll. In the second, she leans her head on his shoulder as they sit on a bench, the city skyline glittering behind them. In the third, he looks down at her, his lips parted as though speaking softly, while she gazes up at him with a look that can only be described as tender. The images were first posted anonymously, but quickly spread like wildfire across social media, igniting a new wave of speculation and debate. What's remarkable about these encounters is how meticulously they seem to guard their privacy, and yet how utterly natural they appeared when they thought no one was watching. Sources close to both stars suggested that even on set, they had developed ways of communicating that no one else could quite decipher. A shared glance, a small nod, a wordless signal that only they understood. Didn't have to say much, one insider said. It was like they spoke an entirely different language when they were together. Another telling incident occurred at a charity gala they both attended weeks after their production concluded. To the public, they were nothing more than colleagues reunited for a good cause. But those who observed closely noticed how Woo-tae subtly adjusted her gown before they walked onto the stage, how Hyeri's gaze followed him across the room when he was speaking to someone else, and how they quietly disappeared for nearly 20 minutes during the dinner, returning just as dessert was being served, looking more relaxed than before. More revealing were the private messages leaked by a staff member who claimed to have mistakenly received them in a group chat. The messages, though brief, carried a weight of familiarity. One read simply, "Don't forget to eat before you come over. I know you'll say you're fine, but you're not. You always make it harder to say goodbye." Whether these messages were authentic or fabricated remains a point of contention, but fans latched onto them as further evidence that their connection went beyond mere friendship. Psychologists and body language experts were even invited onto talk shows to analyze their interactions. Notice how he angles his body toward her, even when others are speaking, one expert pointed out during a televised panel. And how she unconsciously mirrors his gestures, that's often a sign of emotional attunement. Clips of these analyses quickly went viral, adding fuel to an already roaring fire. For every piece of evidence, however, just as many denials, not from Hyeri or Woo-tae themselves, but from their respective agencies. issued identical statements insisting that their relationship was strictly professional and asking the public to respect their privacy, yet even these statements struck some as curiously worded. Notably absent were the usual emphatic denials that tend to accompany baseless rumors in the industry. Meanwhile, fan reactions ranged from ecstatic to defensive. Hashtags like #midnight with Hyeri and Wu-tae and #their secret love story trended for days, while fan-made videos and photo compilations racked up millions of views. One particularly popular fan edit paired their most intimate moments with a melancholy ballad, ending with a caption, "Some stories are written in the spaces between the lines." Perhaps the most poignant account came from a young fan who claimed to have encountered them at a quiet temple on the outskirts of the city. She described how they walked side by side along the stone path, stopping to light incense and bow their heads in prayer. When they emerged, Wu-tae reached out to adjust the scarf around Hyeri's neck, his fingers lingering for just a second too long. "Didn't feel like I was watching two celebrities," the fan wrote in her post. "It felt like I was witnessing something very human, very real." In the midst of all this, both stars continue to appear in public, maintaining a careful balance of professionalism and discretion. Yet those who had followed them from the beginning couldn't help but notice how their smiles seemed just a little softer when they stood near each other, how the tension in their shoulders eased when they shared the same space. It was as if they carried their secret like a fragile glass ornament, something precious and breakable. In plain sight, at a fan meeting a few months later, bold audience member finally voiced the question on everyone's mind. "What do you say to people who think you're more than friends?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. There was a beat of silence before Hyeri glanced at Wu-tae, who simply raised an eyebrow and smiled faintly. Hyeri laughed then, shaking her head before replying. "Say. They should keep watching. Maybe they'll find their answer." The crowd erupted in applause. Question lingered, unanswered yet somehow more compelling for it. We draw this chapter of their story to a close. What remains is not certainty, but a tapestry of moments, small, intimate, impossible to fake, that together suggest something deeper than either has ever admitted. Whether they are star-crossed lovers defying the glare of the spotlight, or simply two souls who found solace in each other amid the chaos of fame, their bond is undeniable. Perhaps that is the beauty of it. In a world obsessed with labels and definitions, they have chosen ambiguity, allowing their story to unfold in whispers and glances rather than declarations. And in doing so, they have given us all something rare, a glimpse of something that feels authentic, unpolished, and profoundly human. So as the city sleeps and the streets empty, somewhere, perhaps down a quiet alley, or along the banks of the river, Hyeri and Wu-tae walk together, still speaking in their secret language, still writing their story between the lines. And perhaps, as long as they keep walking side by side, the rest of us will keep watching, waiting to see where their midnight path will